Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. I am, as usual, just going to press live on our Instagram page. And then I want to welcome our esteemed guest here today, Samir Charles. I will read his bio afterwards, but I'd love to just give the opportunity to all of my guests to say hello. And as usual, my co-host, Jamila, thank you for being here. And go ahead and introduce Lino's going to introduce himself, as we said. And for those that don't know, I'll just let the cat out the bag. I set the first stream up for 3:30 a.m. So whoever is trying to get onto the stream on the previous link, my humblest apologies. It's been a hot minute this last week, so forgive me. Over to you, Jamila. Is Jamila still frozen? I think
It
Jamila's
looks,
frozen.
it does
She's
look like
frozen. So
Jamila is
while we're
frozen.
waiting for her to come back, welcome Samir. Welcome Lino. I'm going to first let Lino introduce himself and then I'll read your bio, Samir.
Okay, thanks. Thanks everyone, and thanks for having me on the show. So my name is Lino Müller. I am the CEO of an NPO called Safe Talk. Safe Talk is a something I formed in September last year, and it's about suicide prevention and mental health awareness. So we do workshops specifically designed to destigmatize suicide, to navigate communication around suicide, and and basically, make it a mainstream conversation so that we know how to deal with this. And we how can I put it? We are an organization that teaches people to be responsible for each other,
Hmm.
so that we're all responsible for each other. That mental health and suicide is not just for psychologists or psychiatrists. It teaches people the skills to navigate communication around suicide so that we're all able to help one another.
Yeah, that's quite noble work and something interesting that I've not heard about because it's a topic that people don't want to discuss. It's taboo. So I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to delve into this a bit deeper.
sure.
Just for the audience that have just joined us from LinkedIn, YouTube, or LinkedIn, the topic today is around, let's get Jamila back. The topic today is about men's mental health and well-being and breaking the silence. So we may not have promoted that Lino is going to be on here with us, but I think through divine timing between Samir and Lino, I think it's the right audience for the right guest for us to be having a topic centered around mental health and breaking the silence around that health and well-being. I just want to mention who is Samir. He's no stranger to this segment in shifting from grudge to grit, grace, and gratitude. He is a community health professional, transformational coach, and an advocate for men's wellness. So, Lino and Samir, I think the two of you are likely going to engage more post this session, and I'm sure you're going to exchange numbers. For Samir, with over a decade in the mental health field and a focused 5-year journey into men's work, he joins us to discuss the often unspoken challenges faced by men and how we can foster healing, connection, and strength. Whilst we do endeavor to cover certain topics and have a flow, we also go with the energetic flow of the session between what our guests come to share. So we're not stuck on this, but we intend to talk about why many men still struggle to ask for help. I think it's an epidemic, if I can call it that. The link between trauma and traditional masculinity, practical tools to build emotional resilience, and the importance of sharing circles and support spaces. So let's continue today's conversation around mental well-being and let's endeavor to rewrite the narrative around strength and what that actually means for men. So I'd love to just invite Samir to start off this conversation with that. And then Jamila, I don't think you've had the opportunity to say hi to everyone because you were frozen. Maybe we start there and then we'll hand over to Samir.
Yes, hi everybody, and welcome to today's episode. We're so grateful to have two men on as our guests today to give us a different perspective. So welcome Samir and welcome Lino. Yes, Anissa, I'm frozen in more than one point of view. It's absolutely freezing here in Johannesburg, and I'm sure the same in
Same,
Cape Town
same.
as well. Yeah, yeah. So I think without any further ado, we've got two great guys, who come with a wealth of knowledge, and we can't wait to hear your perspective.
Thank you.
Samir,
Thank
over
you.
to you. Tell us what
Hi,
inspires
everyone.
you, why you are doing this work as well.
Okay, I was about to say something else, but I'll
Go
start
for it.
there.
No, no, start with the something else and then respond to the question.
No, I was just gonna say that I come into the conversation. Yes, I have all the years of applied studies. I've delved into my own inner work, and I think for this conversation, I'm not just coming in as that community mental health professional, but
Mhm.
as a man who's also walked and continuing to walk the path. So I know what it feels like to hold it all in, to be the strong one, to be the silent one. And I've also experienced what happens when you let go of that mask. When you step into a space where you don't necessarily have to perform, you kind of just get to be. And I think that's where my healing began. And it's also why I do the work that I do today. So, to answer your question, what inspired my work or why I'm doing what I'm doing was actually the birth of my son, which was roughly 9 years ago. And I think what inspired it was a question that I had when I realized I'm going to be having a son, which was so I'm going to be a first time father, but how do I show up as a man for my son? What does masculinity and manhood even mean? And I think because I didn't have a strong positive role model in my childhood, it made it more challenging to figure out what that is, what it looks like, how do I have to show up? And I think that's where it started, where my personal journey into masculinity and manhood started. My journey before that was more just self work, trying to understand myself. But that's where the manhood stuff started. And after that, to be very honest, I wasn't courageous enough, or I don't think I was ready to truly hold space for men at that stage. It was only about 5 years ago where I realized, hey, I can hold space for men. And I think before that, when I started counseling and holding space in healing work roughly 10, just over 10 years ago, my clientele was roughly 80 to 95% women, and maybe one or two guys in between. And over the last 5 years, those numbers have shifted, where about 80% of my clients are actually men, which then reflected to me that I actually need to be more squarely in this space, creating circles, having one on one sessions, because on my own journey, yes, I've been to the therapists, I've been to the coaches, I've been for programs, but something that really opened my eyes was just sitting in circles with guys telling stories around the fire. And it was initially an extremely bizarre experience because I'm looking at guys, sitting with guys who are from different walks of life, different classes, races, creeds, religions, everything. But the stories that they were sharing was nearly identical, and it it shifted something inside myself where I was like, actually, I've been isolating, feeling alone, being silent, but so many other guys are experiencing the same thing. So I'm actually not abnormal. I'm not out there. I don't have to isolate. People actually understand. And if we can share those stories, we can shift narratives. Yeah. So, I mean, I could go into further stuff, but I would love to hear Lena's perspective as well.
Mm, mm. Definitely.
Thanks for yeah,
Definitely.
thanks
I
for
want to
sharing
know
that.
why and what's prompted you to start this group. What was the big why behind it? That why do you feel you need to serve this unspoken community and topic?
Okay. So I lost my brother to suicide. Must be 20 years ago. And for us to deal with his death, we used the general stigma that was out there that served us and served everyone else, you know. So the stigma of, oh, he was selfish, or he wanted to die, or it was his time, or it was his time to die. Um, and and through the years, I mean, I come from the fitness and sports industry, sports psychology, and a performance coach. I started dealing with people from all walks of life, and I heard their stories, and it sort of resonated with me, and the thought always came back to my brother having taken his life and what he was going through, and was I being fair with the judgment that I was putting on him or putting on the situation, or was that just me doing that to be able to deal with it, better, sort of shutting down. Um, and I started, well, that was always in the back of my mind, and then when I first realized that we need to do something about this in South Africa was when I went to the UK in 2015 for the first time. And this, the topic of mental health and suicide was a mainstream conversation in the UK back in 2015 already. I subsequently came back to South Africa, and I didn't delve completely into it. I sort of used the knowledge that I gained in the UK for those few months, and used it on family and clients, and started getting a feel of mental health and what people are willing to talk about or not talk about. I then kept going back to the UK to learn more and to understand. And eventually, I started working for an NPO in the UK, where we did mental health training, suicide prevention training, doing self harm training, and bringing awareness to corporates, to schools, to police, to all people who are basically in a leadership, people who are in charge of other people. Um, and we did this training, and I said, the thing is that the UK is so established in terms of mental health and its pathways, and yet they have a much cushier lives than we do in South Africa. And I thought that we need to bring this to South Africa, and that's what I did. And we have far more trauma and adversity in this country, with far less mental health training or mental health awareness or pathways in mental health. So I took it upon myself to start this, and to go with this mission and educate people and make it a mainstream conversation here in our country, and educate people on what they should say and things that they shouldn't say. Like Samir was saying, that yeah, you sat around the fire with men, and you had a discussion and you talked, and I mean, that, yes, that helps, but we are only comfortable enough to do that if the people around you know what to say back to you, if the people around you don't judge you and don't hold stigmas against you. And I find that even when our communication comes from the heart, we tend to say the wrong things. And so, yes, that's what my mission is, and that's what we're all about.
Unbelievable. And you're doing such amazing work, Lino. Must commend you on that.
Thanks.
I think
Thank you.
that in life, there's so many expectations that are put onto us. Can you guys hear me?
I can
Or am
hear
I
you.
frozen again?
No, no, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, we have so many expectations put onto us. Like when you become a new father, you just expected to know what to do. As a woman, if having a son, I have the expectation from my husband to be that role model for my son. And life doesn't always work out that way. And I think that in the unfortunate circumstances where you have a divorce, and myself, in my experience as a single mom, what was I going to do then? Who was going to be that role model for my son? And then you're placed in a situation where you actually don't know how to navigate here, because you don't know what the right things. When you're a mom to a girl, it's a lot more easier, right? But being a mom to a boy and being that perfect role model is not the easiest. So, I understand those expectations that are placed onto people. And as new parents, it's difficult because you really don't have a handbook telling you that this is right and that is wrong. Each situation is different, each child is different. I mean, even if you're a parent to three, you're not that same parent to each one of your children. So I think also in our community, what's rife as judgment, right? Judgment on dads, on single moms, on whether you a divorcee or you're not a divorcee. So there's all these judgments that are placed on you, which then lead to bigger problems and bigger issues of you not being able to cope, which then I'm sure also relate to your line of work, Lino. um, so for me, I think it's so important for us to have these conversations, and like you say, to have the conversations with people who know what to say back to you without any judgment. And that for me is what this platform is all about. To be able to listen to you guys, and your perspective, and for other people to know out there that there are support structures available that are non judgmental, that are there to actually help you and assist you. So, again, I must say thank you to both of you, and really just want to open the platform out to you guys concerning what I've just said and how we should move forward, so that we help each other to grow, so that we help each other to be stronger, um, and to lessen the incidence of suicide, of isolation, of people being stigmatized. So yeah, I mean, Anisa, I think we've all experienced this to some degree or the other, and it's about who we have in our circles that actually make us stronger and make us more successful, to be able to look at life through a more positive eye and to help those around us.
I do want to ask Lena something that he's touched on, Jamila. I mean, definitely what you've just shared now is so pertinent for all of us, whether the father plays a dual role or whether the mother plays a dual role, and what that is. But Lena said something that's now stuck with me, and I'm
No,
a
what
little
did I
bit
do?
I'm a little bit taken aback by that comment, because we may think that we're operating in a heart-centered manner, and we may not say the right thing. So that is staying with me, because we, in our sincerity, as Jamila might say, we want to approach this the right way. From our lens, might still be very
Mm.
much the wrong way. So if you can just respond to Jamila on her thing, and then maybe come back to that as well, Lino. And then I want Samir's perspective as well.
Okay, I'm gonna let Samir answer Jamila, since he's doing the men's mental health thing, and I'm I'm doing the general and sort of everyone. But what I can, if I may come back to your question, Anissa, is that we tend to think we're saying the right things, and yes, we're saying the wrong things. So just out of the four of us, who's ever, let's say someone has come to us with a problem, and and we tell them, hey, I completely understand what you're going through. I've said that to someone before. How about you guys? Have you said that to someone before? Just saying, I understand what you're going through. And it's not
Yeah.
something that you should say to someone who comes to you with a problem, for instance, even though it comes from the heart. Another thing is we tend to say, look, just think about the positive things in life. These are things like, or saying it can't be that bad. There's other people that are worse off than you. These statements or these responses are not going to help a person who's coming to you in a state of stress. The best thing you can do to a person who comes to you is just listen to them, empathize with them, um, tell them thank you for sharing that with us, because we want to continue, we want to encourage that person to continue sharing with us. And if we say some of the things that I've just mentioned, that's not really encouraging. That's more along the lines of, well, it doesn't really matter, get over it, and that invalidates the person, and it invalidates the person's situation. So even if you've been through something like that and you say, I completely understand, I've been through the same thing, you may have been through the same thing, but you do not feel the same as that person feels, because no two people feel exactly the same. We all have our different experiences and we all feel differently, so we cannot judge a person's situation. I mean, in my own circle, there's two brothers that have grown up in the same household, and they run a business together, and the business is on the verge of bankruptcy. One brother tends to have a positive attitude, and the other brother tends to sort of fall apart. So yet they're going through the same experience. So I would say the most important thing to start off with, and to keep it really simple, is please listen to the person, and just give them your ear and give them your shoulder to cry on. Don't tell them everything is going to be okay. That's also something that someone doesn't want to hear. But tell them that you are there for them, and they matter to you, and their story matters, and how they feel matters, and that's part of listening and empathizing, instead of trying to give someone a solution. And Samir, you might be quite interested in this. Men and women communicate very differently, to say the least. So, for instance, men are very solution orientated, right? If a woman comes to a man, and this is how many arguments start between mother and son and daughter, and a woman comes to you and says, "Hey, this is what's going on, and I feel this way and I feel that, and this is making me this," and the man sits there, and he starts thinking, and then all of a sudden his response is, "Well, if you feel that way, you should do this, and you should go 1 2 3, and you should do this," and he comes with all sorts of practical solutions. And all of a sudden he sees the irritation in the lady's face, and he's like, "What's the problem? Why are you irritated?" And she's like, "Why are you giving me solutions? I just came to talk to you." And that's how it just starts. It's just that we're all different and we all communicate differently, but we cannot go wrong if we just listen. And it's very difficult for men to just listen, right? And it's difficult for a woman to understand that men want to give solutions, and we just need to listen.
Samir, over to you to just in terms of Jamila's like share earlier on and our guidance, and maybe what you'd like to follow up on as a response to what Lena was sharing, because there was some important nuggets to factor in, and how you weave some of that into your social circles, even, or your men's circles.
Okay. So I think to separate it into purely masculine or feminine um, would be a mistake as well. I think that it's very relative and contextual, and we need to look at each situation in a case by case manner. Because, I mean, I have guys who see me either individually or even in group who say they're able to hold space for their partners, able to listen, yet their partner keeps hitting them with solutions. And I have women that say the same thing. So I think it's about understanding that each case is so nuanced, and we need to meet people where they are, not where we assume they should be. Um, and even with notions of trauma, I think what Lena said is spot on, I feel, where trauma is something that's very relative. We can experience exactly the same thing, but the way that it impact, I mean, in some of the circles I've held, people have spoken about really heavy um, trauma where they've been raped and physically abused and emotionally abused. And I spoke to one of the guys, and he was like, I've never experienced trauma in my life. So I was like, okay, that's quite interesting, because I feel as human beings we have flaws and have experienced some kind of woundedness. And it later came out that sometimes trauma isn't just about what has happened to us, but also what hasn't. So that specific individual didn't experience emotional closeness, that comfort, the holding, that permission to feel. So he had certain unmet needs, but because it wasn't as bad as some trauma other people have experienced, he didn't feel comfortable acknowledging his own experience. And I think that's vital. Firstly, acknowledging what we are experiencing, being it an emotion, feeling, situation, event. Let's call it what it is.
Are we losing Samir in between, or is it just my side?
Yeah, there's a bit of a breakup
Yeah, he
there.
seems to be breaking up quite a
Um,
bit. I thought he
Yes,
was actually on my side.
Samir. Yeah, I thought it was just my
Yeah, I think
side.
just also just to mention Lino's point. Sorry, just Lino's point, we become conditioned as we grow up to accept certain things in a certain way. Like for me, growing up, there was just no communication. There was no option to speak about what you're going through, your feelings, what your opinions and views were on certain things. I mean, even something as simple as getting the flu, you were take two panadas, go to sleep, and you'll be fine in the morning, kind of an attitude. So I think we've got to also, and I'm not speaking generally here, I'm speaking from a personal perspective as well as people who have grown up in the same generation as I have. But we also have to learn to educate ourselves on what's acceptable and what's not, and to break down that conditioning where we start to listen to people, give them that safe space, and not immediately try to find a solution to what somebody is going through. Sometimes that's all people need. They just want you to sit there in the mud with them, to be able to gain that security and that safe space for you to start sharing exactly how you're feeling. And I think that for me personally, that's been my experience, where you immediately want to give a solution to people because you feel that's how you're helping. But that's how I grew up, because that's how I was confronted, like by my mom, by my dad, by my school teachers. That's just the way that
Mm.
um, we grew up. And I've had to unlearn all of that to be able to be more successful at what it is that I'm doing as a life coach, for example.
Yeah, true. And there's nothing wrong with giving someone a solution, but shall we give them, shall we ask their permission? Maybe we've listened to them and say, hey, I have an idea or I have a solution for you. Can we chat about that and tell me how you feel about that? We don't just we don't just have to go in and start a lecture immediately, especially to someone who's feeling vulnerable, because it could make them feel worse. I have a problem. I'm doing a lot of work with our religious leaders as well to make them uh, more aware of what people need, because it seems like in general, I'm saying, the only answer to someone is, well, you don't pray enough, go and pray. And that is also, that is a lecture, that is an instruction. You can't just tell someone who's coming to you and being vulnerable with you, well, go and pray. What if they're praying already? Well, that means their prayer is not good enough to them, right?
Mm.
So we can offer solutions, but let's listen first and let's ask for permission to give solutions.
Mm. I love that.
Absolutely. I think active listening is something that we all need to learn more about and to adopt into our interactions with people, be it our family members, be it our clients, whoever it is, because people seldomly do that. Actively listen to what someone else is going through.
Sure.
Can I
Sure.
So
direct the
I think
conversation? Sorry, Samir. You were gonna give an
no,
opinion, and I'll ask us to direct afterwards.
yeah, no. So I think something that I share quite frequently with the couples I work with is the notion of l- when we are to be holding space, or if I have something to share with my partner, let's have little built-in code words. So if I've got a bit of heaviness that I want to share with my partner, I don't want solutions. I just kind of want to share. Let me say, babe, I need to vent. And then my partner knows I just need to purge, get this off my chest. I just need her to be present and listen. Or I can say, babe, I actually would like a strat session, which means we're going to sit down and we're going to work something out together. Or I want to have a flow session. This is just the back and forth. And why the code words are so helpful is because your partner can now respond and say, actually, I don't have capacity right now. Can we maybe do it later, give you a different time? Or actually, yes, I can. And I think it's not just coupled relationships, but all relationships that we can actually use this in so that we can meet each other where we are and we can share and feel held, heard, valued, and understood.
Samir, that's a lovely segue into where I wanted to direct the conversation next. Before we do that, let's just acknowledge those that have joined us here. And you'll notice me looking away from the screen because I'm trying to welcome those that are here on Instagram as well. So, welcome Robert, Fani, Sajida, Nadira, Zolani. We have quite a bit of men that have joined today's session. I wonder why. But on that note, the part I want to segue to, somebody's asking on, let me ask this first. Sajida saying track, flow, and session, Samir, because you've positioned business language words in a marriage partnership. So I understand that. We will respond to that shortly, Sajida. And I love the code word because it is, let's form a language or a narrative that we can start to understand one another in this language. But the segue that I wanted to go to is, if there is this code language that, or these codes that you want to use in this way and approach, whether it is between your spouse or partner or outside of those relationships, why is it that men still struggle to ask for help? Because for me, that is the big question here, that they don't ask for help, they suffer in silence, which comes back to Lino's line of work and his purpose and passion that he's inspired to shift the narrative on, is how do we get men to talk? What are the ways to do that?
I think
Is
it's
there a
through
code?
education.
Is it
No.
education? What is it? What exactly is it? Please educate us all on this.
Okay, I'll just speak from my knowledge. I think Samir is going to run us through codes. For me, it's it's a it's a cultural thing, and cultural meaning that we come from a generation of where men had to be hard. Men went to war, and men worked difficult jobs, and they were not encouraged to talk. If there was a complaint from a man, it was all it was always, suck it up, be a man. I mean, there's an expression for it. I mean, if we have an expression, you already know that there's something. So I mean, be a man, take it like a man, so many generations are coming from very harsh environments where these things weren't encouraged. It's changing a lot now, and I'm sort of I'm whenever we change things, and I think Jamila and I had this conversation a few days ago, we sort of tipped the scales a little bit. So yes, there are men, and men. I think, Anissa, men are talking more now, and this is because every generation to the next sort of irons out the previous generation's problems. Um, and we were talking about Gen X versus Gen Z the other day, and we were saying Gen Z are so different. And there was a whole bunch of people complaining, oh, Gen Z are like this, they're too sensitive, they're too this, and they're too that. And then I asked the question to the bunch of Gen X, how did they get that way? And they all looked at me confused. I said, because you made life much easier for them, because you struggled. So yeah, we are responsible for the next generation. So and I think, as much as there still needs to be a lot of correcting, it is improving.
Samir, maybe you can share some of your thoughts with us.
I agree with Lena. I think cultural conditioning is a huge part of why men are showing up the way they are. The whole notion of don't cry, be a man, toughen up, soldier on, um, and some more crass ones that I won't share. But it sets, Lena knows them as well. I heard in his giggle. And this basically sets a foundation for where emotional expression is actually equated with weakness. And it's not that men are emotionally incompetent. We are actually really emotionally competent. Sometimes emotional intelligence isn't depicted or not associated with men. It's just the way that men share is not always understood by their partners, but there's also fear many times. I don't want to share exactly how I'm feeling with my partner because that's going to lead to my partner feeling unsafe. Or I've shared how I felt before because there's this big drive currently where it's like men need to be more vulnerable and share. And men are like, okay, they've tried it. The responses that they've received um, was quite negative. So they're like, I'm never doing that again. I'm going to just maintain my armor and be safe so that my partner, my kids, my community can feel my strength because I'm not talking about my vulnerabilities. Um, there's lots of internalized beliefs as well, where over time, I think many men have developed this idea that if I ask someone for help, I'm being a burden on them, or it's like a sign of personal failure. Like I can't do it on my own, so I have failed myself, my family, the community, because I can't soldier on and just do the things I need to do. Which I think, in a way, is also tied to this idea that men or that the masculine identity is tied to notions of control. So you should be able to figure things out alone. And if I ask for help, I'm giving away my power and my control. because there's that whole myth of self reliance, where self reliance is a strength and it's typically weaponized against connection, um, which then becomes self isolation. So I think it's about rewriting all those, let's call it programming, and sharing. So that's why I like the notion of sharing stories, because then we see these common themes and we start breaking down silos, creating connections, and refostering a sense of community and togetherness. And I
Nice.
think that's
I like what you yeah. Sorry. No,
no,
I
go
like
for it,
what you said
please.
about the I like what you said about the armor. And that armor sort of seems to so-called make the man. You know, if having that armor is that now I am a man because I have this armor and I'm not going to let anything get to me and and make me weak, and that's the thing. And speaking about Samir, you were speaking about expression, that sometimes men do come out and say, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable, I'm going to be sensitive, and it becomes a mockery. And
Mm.
during one of my workshops, to relate to that, it was males and females, and a man stood up and said, there's no way I'm going to speak about my problems to another man. And I said, okay, I understand. Well, share, why not? And he says, well, they'll make fun of me. They'll say I'm weak, and it will become a big joke. So I said, so we've got 40 ladies in this workshop. We're all willing to listen to you. And he says, are you crazy? I wouldn't tell any woman my story because they'll tell another 30 women my story, you know? So this is so what you do, if you come from that cultural background, you cannot speak to another man, and apparently if they speak to a woman, that story is going to carry. So what do we do?
Mm.
Mm. Yeah,
Let's read
for
some of the
me,
comments. Can we just go and
for,
acknowledge the
okay,
guys that
so
have
let's
commented? If we could do that, because there's been so thank you, Dominic, for sharing your feedback and for your presence, for being here. I haven't seen you on our segment before, so we hope you're going to come back more. Then Ronald says, welcome to the show, gents. That's for you, and thanks for the messages of hope. And we also have him saying, well, glad to have you here. I won't put that back up. But he says, a topic that must be addressed as men suffer in silence. Agreed. But there were some meatier ones I want to get to. Archie also says, good day, all important topic that requires openness. And here's a topic I do want to talk about and show up screen again. Ronald says, in high school, I told myself, father, I wanted to die. Maybe my father, I wanted to die. There was no response. He had his own challenges. He was devastated when my mother died, right? So I'm going to read some more and then I'd love for you to come back to that, right? And then Archie says, between what's said and not meant and what is meant and not said, most of love is lost. Khalil Gibran, my favorite, also one of my favorites. Um, Archie says, don't offer a lecture to a person who needs a hug. I think, Lena, that was in response to your comment. Hold the sacred space without extending guidance and solutions and support. Just hold it sacredly. Witness that pain. Witness the wound and the trauma. Archie says, understanding and compassion can change the course of history. And he also says, one man army syndrome is real in the mind. So those are some of the comments. Don't forget to get back to our Instagram lady that said track flow and sessions. She loves the code words, but we need to come back to maybe just responding to that. I don't see any other comments on Instagram, so that's it. So over to the gents. We have what, 16 minutes. Is there anything that you'd love to say about what we said we were going to talk about? The link between trauma and traditional masculinity, practical tools to build emotional resilience, and the importance of sharing circles and support spaces. Is there anything you want to touch on there as well in the remaining time? We'd love to hear your voices a lot today because we're really blessed to have you here today. Anyone?
Sorry,
Ping pong.
yeah,
Samir, Lena.
sorry, Anissa. I didn't hear you too well there. If I can ask Samir if you heard Anissa, if you can continue, I'll see if the signal gets a bit better as we go along.
Okay. So, you know, something about these conversations that I think is important is sometimes not sticking 100% to the topic. Because I think the hidden gems are found in just flowing and sharing together. And I think something that I've witnessed um, is that many men, well, a lot of the guys that I've spoken to have spoken about this notion of feeling as if they're living in chaos, where everything is crumbling around them. And they're just looking for at least one solid step where they can feel solid, secure, safe. And to reflect on my own journey, I had that as well, where I felt everything was crumbling, nothing's working out. And what I learned, I mean, let's be honest, when I looked back, I learned the stuff. When I was immersed in the moment, it was like, I'm not going to learn lessons then. But when we look back, our vision's 2020 or in hindsight. And what I realized was it wasn't me crumbling, it was the things that actually wasn't a part of me, things that I've learned that was actually not true. And when I started looking at self relationships or the relationship that I had with myself, and I encourage others to look at their relationship with themselves as well, I realized that the pressure that I was experiencing as a man wasn't breaking me. It wasn't me that was crumbling. It actually allowed the core of my being to start crystallizing. And it's through that space, that gem, where our brilliance shines through. And I think I say this under correction, but I think it was Rumi who said that light comes in at the point of hurt or at the point of the wound. And I think there's some truth to that because I know I wouldn't be able to shine my light or my gifts wouldn't have come to life if I didn't experience the trauma that I did. And it's through the trauma and healing thereof where empathy is born because you can start to truly understand pieces of what other people are experiencing. Of course, we'll never know exactly what someone else is experiencing. That's their journey, which their perspective and my own perspective is built on an accumulation of experiences that I've had over time. So even when I work with clients, I typically say with each of my clients, yes, I've studied many years. Yes, I've been on my own healing journey for over 20 years. But you know what? We are each the expert of ourselves. And I mean, my job, I always say, is to hold space. I'm a space holder. There's many other fancy titles and everything, but I simply hold space and do my best to facilitate processes if and when necessary. And I think that, I mean, if you're looking at like the notion of trauma, it doesn't go away. It gets stored in our bodies, that woundedness, our emotions, and everything. And with men, because we don't always have the language to share, how we're feeling. Because if someone asks, "How are you?" it's typically, "I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm awesome, I'm fantastic, life is great, I can't complain." Instead of saying, "Actually, I'm sad, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I've just experienced this. So actually, I'm really happy today." And it's about learning the language of, or even just naming emotions, having some emotional literacy, saying what we're actually experiencing. And I know with a lot of my buddies, we do it to each other. So it's like, "How are you doing?" They'll respond, and then you ask, "No, like, how are you really doing?" Because we have lots of platitudes where we don't actually connect. And I think I think Lena also mentioned it, where the secret lies in the connection, in actually just being present together. We don't actually have to do anything. Just being there in the space with someone, in and of itself, is everything. And resilience, I feel, it's not about not falling. It's about knowing how to rise with gentleness, and within that lies the power. So it's like we don't need to be emotional monks. I think let's look at it more as being emotionally attuned warriors for us men.
Thank you, Samir, for that. Those deep thoughts and very, very helpful ones. What I'd like to also ask both of you guys is that I've spoken to a lot of women, and a lot. So I know this is not just unique to me. It's not my problem alone. But I've spoken to a lot of women, and they've come back and said that a guy just won't talk. You'll be having a conversation or an argument or whatever it is, and there's no response coming back. Okay. I've experienced this with my son as well. From a guy's perspective, what is it that we as women should be doing to make this flow of conversation a lot easier? And like I said, it's not just about when you're in a relationship with someone. It's I've noticed that with my son, and then it keeps me thinking, why is he keeping stuff away from me? Why won't he converse? Why won't he feel comfortable enough to tell me how he's feeling or to be vulnerable? What is it that what pointers can you give us? Lino, maybe you start.
I don't think I want to answer that question. I don't know if you're frozen, Jamila, but you don't look impressed with that answer.
Don't hold it against you.
She scared him off.
Oh,
We
we've lost
really didn't
Lino.
want to answer that.
I scared him.
Please answer this question because even in my co-parenting extent of my ex, I'll have a heated conversation and like pouring my heart out, and there'll be no response. And that rubs women up the wrong way. I literally want to scream and throttle the man when he doesn't respond. And the boys do it as well. My sons do it too, Jamila. And I just cannot understand it. Please educate us, woman audience that are listening in on Jamila's very pertinent question. Please.
I think Lena had the best idea, and he beat me to it. So now I'm stuck to with the ladies to answer.
With
You
us.
know, I think it's not as straightforward as we'd like to imagine. I think it's multifaceted, and it's not something I can say, "This is the answer." I think part of it is, instead of seeking the answers, what if we asked a different question? How do I create and build, nurture safety and trust? Because the question also is, how come is the person not responding? Is there Is there mistrust? Are they not feeling safe enough to share? Because I've actually had a lot of men who said, I've shared completely and tried to bare my soul. A short while afterwards, it was weaponized and used against me. So that they're not feeling safe in actually sharing how they feel. So how do we
Oh my God.
cultivate,
Lino's back.
nurture
Lino's back.
safety and trust?
He never ran away. We're going to put him on the spot now, too.
Well played.
Samir, Samir, I just want to say, Samir, that, that, I mean, gosh, like what you've just shared right now, do they feel safe? So what you're saying is women can also make their men feel unsafe to respond. Is that what I'm hearing you say? And we need to watch how we approach is what we say, how we say it, in our tone, in our use of words. Can you see how we're going on now? So if
So, so a relationship is something between two people, and we can't say that it's all on men or all on women. It's like a tango. We're dancing, and in different moments, a different partner holds the space. Sometimes one needs support, sometimes the other needs support. So we can't say, this is what the man has to do, this is what the woman has to do. Like, yes, we have stereotypes, we have traditional adults, we have all of that. But typically, it's case by case, depending on the partnership that needs to find a way to communicate. In order to communicate, we need trust, we need respect, we need that mutual values so that we can have an open conversation. Because if you're not feeling safe, you're not going to share. And there's been a lot of men who have said, I can hold the space for my partner. She can say what she wants, but I can't always. I need to walk on eggshells. And then I'll speak to the wife, and she'll be like, I feel like I have to walk on eggshells. So it's like everybody's walking on eggshells. Why don't we look at how to connect? Let's nurture the safety, let's nurture the trust, and let's cultivate more beautiful relationships.
I
Like,
agree.
what
So
do we do with the information that we receive?
Lena, over to you, dude. I want to hear your perspective.
yeah, I'm
You
not
can
gonna
have it
delve
back,
into this
Lino.
big time, but I'll challenge something here, right? so, so Samir said feeling safe, and this goes to be diplomatically on the safe side when I answer this question is, do we ask questions with a preconceived answer in our heads? I don't know if you've touched on that, but sometimes, we ask a question or we want a response, but we want that response to go with according to how we feel, and we want the answer that we want. And when you don't get that's usually where the hostility comes in. So I think we must be very careful when we ask questions. Are we genuinely asking a question because we want to hear that person? Or are we asking a question to reaffirm, or are we going to ask that question until we get reaffirmed? And I think with the latter that I've said, I think that a lot of conflict arises because we asked that question. Samir is laughing with a mic off. I can see it. Yeah, but we do ask questions with the wrong intention. And let's put it this way: let's say it's not women, it's not men, it's both of us. And we need to genuinely ask the right questions with the right intention.
Jamila, you've opened up a can of worms, and I think we're going to
Yeah, for
invite
Yes.
sure.
these two gentlemen back on
Well,
again to have more provocative discussions and ask the right questions so we can, what's it? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, so that we can unpack who we are in our different dynamics. I think this would be an interesting continuation for our discussions going forward. But in closing, is there anything between yourself, Lino, and Samir And also, Jamila, if you've got a closing question, another provocative one that you could pose to these gents, is there anything you'd like to share with our audience in closing for today?
For
I
Jamila,
think for me,
yes.
no
Okay.
question or anything like that. But I think that it's about a continuous journey to try to understand each other. It's like you say that a lot of the times there's miscommunication. Samir, you mentioned the fact of, well, you mentioned about men feeling that when they lay themselves vulnerable, it's often weaponized against them. And I think that in itself has a lot of misconception and misunderstanding around it. And I'm speaking specifically as a woman, where something is not meant to be weaponized, but rather to try and create an understanding of where she is coming from or what the situation might be and how it could have been compared to a certain situation, other situation that the person, and maybe it doesn't make any sense, but like we said, we need more time maybe to unpack this. But I think that in closing from me, it's all about trying to understand each other a bit better because, yes, Anissa, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And sometimes, a lot of the times, majority of the time, we're speaking different languages. So it's about our continued effort to be able to understand our male counterparts. And it's only through discussions like these that we can get to some higher level of understanding each other. Don't be
Lino, from
scared
your
of
side,
again.
sorry.
It's call the Wi-Fi gods and tell them to switch me off again.
Lino, I mean, I would love to, Lena, I want to invite you also on again because I'd love to delve in more into this topic around suicide. We haven't even scratched the surface with this
No.
topic, and if you
Yeah,
are
yeah.
welcome to, would like to come back on again. I think it's going to
Sure.
unfortunately need to be 2026, or if the two of you don't ever mind being um, kind of there in the back end, if we say we have a cancellation like we did, we are very grateful to you. But is there anything pertinent that you'd like to share here as a closing point that is on your heart, around this?
Okay. I got sort of half of what you said. You were breaking again, but in closing, I'd just like to say I've done a lot of workshops and a lot of talks at schools recently, and I and in these workshops, I've pointed out that we're all going through something. There's hardly anyone that's not going through something or hasn't been through something. So my message is that, let's instead of tearing each other down, we need to build each other up. And the least we can do is just be kind to someone today. And that's basically it. It's a simple message. Everyone is going through something and we're all responsible for each other. We're all one. It doesn't matter your background, your color, your religion. We are one, and we're all going through something. Can we just be kind to one another instead of try and tear each other down?
That's beautiful. It links nicely into Samir's point. Everyone has a story, and they may not be wearing their story so publicly. So if you don't know what's beneath the surface, always endeavor to aim to be kind. Thank you, Lino. Samir, your
Thank you.
closing remark.
So, I mean, I love this conversation. And I think on the note of relationships, something we don't always delve into or even learn about is how to have a relationship with ourselves. And I think that's always the first space or place we should actually do the work. Like cultivating that relationship with ourselves to better understand ourselves, which then has a knock on effect of being able to better relate to others as well. And I think just being able to create more spaces where people can actually share their stories in a way where there's no judgment. You're being held from a space of compassion, love, where you can just show up as yourself, and that's enough. Let's build more of those. Because I think when people are able to tell their stories in safe spaces, shame, guilt, all those types of emotions kind of fade away.
Yeah, I will agree with that. You can see we don't have enough time. We're in an hour and 5 minutes. I think this is the longest we've stayed over time. But I want to thank you, Jens, and thank you, Jamila, for being here. Thank you for everyone that's on Instagram. I may not always have to, I can't acknowledge all the comments there, but we are grateful for you being here. Those that are watching the replay, thank you. Please send us your comments if you want Lino and Samir back on again. We'll have to figure out, maybe squeeze them in and not on our normal Friday. Maybe we could do a special edition and just to bring them back again. For me, I'd like to close off with the word craft is really what I set up my company name, and why it's so meaningful for me is it's all of what you've echoed. It's connected relationships ultimately amplifies that future transformation for all of us. But it's connected relationships with ourselves before we can connect with others more meaningfully. So on that note, I'm going to say goodbye until next week, and really thankful, grateful for the wisdom shared here, for the empathy, for the work that you both are doing. And I'd love to have you back. And it doesn't need to be on our normal Friday, special edition just for the two of you, Jane. How does that sound?
Thank you. Anytime.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Until
you.
next time,
Thank you,
Jamila.
guys, and thank you, Lino. Yeah, thank you, Lino, for coming on at such short notice. And we certainly want you back on again. Same with you, Samir. And thank you for all the um, golden nuggets of wisdom that you've shared with us. We look forward to many, many more.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend,
Bless your
everyone.
heart. Bless your
You
heart and
too.
soul. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, we do
Bye.
stay on normally, but